Welcome to A Stack Smile. Every week, I break down a hard lesson I learned the expensive way. This one almost cost me a job. Part 1, the interview. I talked for 11 minutes straight before anyone stopped me. That's not an exaggeration. I checked the recording afterward, because I wanted to understand what had gone wrong. 11 minutes, one question. They'd asked me to walk them through a project I'd led, and somewhere around minute 3 I stopped answering the question and started performing competence instead. Every sentence spawned 2 more. I explained the context, then the context behind the context, then a tangent about a stakeholder conflict that had nothing to do with what they'd asked. I could see it happening in real time, the interviewer's eyes doing that thing where they're still nodding but they've stopped listening, and instead of stopping, I sped up, like if I just got to the good part fast enough I could rescue it. I didn't get the job. I don't think the content of what I said was the problem. I think the volume was the problem. I'd handed them 11 minutes of unfiltered thought instead of 90 seconds of a decision. And somewhere in there, without meaning to, I told them something true about how I work under pressure. I fill space. I don't trust silence to do anything on my behalf. It took me a long time to understand why that cost me the room. It took me even longer to understand that the talking wasn't the only problem. I wasn't just failing to say less. I was failing to hear anything at all, because a person who is busy filling silence isn't listening to what the silence is telling them. Part 2, what silence actually signals. Here's the thing nobody tells you about talking too much, it's not really about the words. It's about what the talking reveals underneath them. When you over-explain, you're communicating, whether you mean to or not, that you don't trust your first sentence to be enough. You're hedging in real time. You're pre-defending against objections nobody's raised yet. And the people listening pick up on that, even if they couldn't articulate why. They don't hear this person is thorough. They hear this person is anxious about being believed. Compare that to the version of the same interview where I say, I led the redesign. It cut onboarding time by 40%. Happy to go deeper on any part of that. Same information. Completely different signal. The short version says, I know what happened, I know what mattered about it, and I trust you to ask if you want more. That's not confidence as a personality trait, it's confidence as a communication choice. And weirdly, it's a choice you can make even on days you don't feel confident at all. The sentence doesn't know how you feel. It only knows how long it is. I started noticing this pattern everywhere once I knew to look for it. The friend who over-apologizes and somehow makes the apology feel less sincere with every added sentence. The colleague who answers a yes or no question with a paragraph, and how the room quietly stops taking their answers seriously, not because the paragraphs are wrong, just because there are so many of them that nothing in them can carry weight. Weight requires scarcity. If everything you say is delivered at the same length and same urgency, nothing in what you say stands out as the important part. The listener has to do that work themselves, and most people won't bother. There's a specific kind of silence that reads as authority, and it's not the silence of having nothing to say. It's the silence after something true has been said, when you resist the urge to keep going and let it land instead. That pause is doing work. Most people can't stand to let it. Part 3, the experiment. After the interview, I ran a kind of experiment on myself, though I didn't call it that at the time. For about 2 months, I gave myself a rule: in any meeting, answer the question that was actually asked, and stop. No pre-context. No well, it depends, but. If someone wanted more, they'd ask. It was uncomfortable in a way I wasn't prepared for. The urge to keep talking wasn't really about the information, it was about the silence that followed. Silence felt like exposure. Like if I stopped talking, the gap would be filled with someone else's judgment of what I just said, and I wouldn't get to control it anymore. Talking more was a way of controlling the room a little longer. I hadn't realized how much of my talking was really just delaying the moment where I found out what people thought. The first few weeks, I felt like I was being rude. Curt. I kept adding disclaimers in my head that I didn't say out loud, like a phantom limb of my old habit. But something started shifting by week 3. People started asking me more questions, not fewer. When I gave a short, complete answer and stopped, there was space for someone else to lean in and say, wait, tell me more about that part. I was no longer deciding, unilaterally, which parts of my thinking were worth their attention. They were choosing. And when they chose, they actually listened to what came next, because they'd asked for it. The other thing that changed, my mistakes got quieter, too. When I was wrong about something and I'd said it in one sentence, correcting it was one sentence back. When I used to be wrong at length, unwinding it took just as long, and everyone in the room had to sit through the unwinding. Brevity, it turned out, wasn't just about looking confident. It made me cheaper to be wrong around. People forgive a one-sentence mistake fast. A 10-minute one lingers. But I noticed something else in that same stretch, something I didn't have language for yet. All the space I was freeing up by talking less, I wasn't using it for anything. I'd just stop talking and then wait, a little tensely, for my turn to come back around. I'd gotten quieter. I hadn't gotten more attentive. Those turned out to be two completely different skills, and I'd only been practicing one of them. Part 4, the second interview. 8 months after that 11-minute interview, I sat in a different room, for a different reason, and someone asked me almost the same question. Walk me through a project you led. I answered in about 40 seconds. I told them what the problem was, what I did about it, and what changed because of it. Then I stopped talking, and I let the silence sit there, and it was uncomfortable for about 2 seconds, and then the person across the table said, "Okay, tell me more about how you got buy-in for that." And I did, because now they actually wanted to know, instead of me deciding for them that they should. I got that one. And for a while, I told this story as if that were the ending, the 40-second answer, the room won, the lesson learned. It felt complete. It wasn't. Part 5, what I missed. About a year later, I was in a meeting where I'd gotten very good at saying less. I gave my short answer. I left my silence. And the person across from me kept talking, and I realized, sitting there, that I wasn't actually listening to what they said next. I was waiting. I had the posture of listening, quiet, nodding, not interrupting, but my attention was somewhere else, half composing what I'd say when it was my turn again, like an actor waiting in the wings instead of watching the scene. They said something important in that stretch. I found out 3 weeks later, secondhand, that they'd told me, in that exact meeting, in that exact silence I was so proud of holding, about a problem that was about to become a much bigger problem. I hadn't caught it. Not because they hid it. Because I hadn't actually been listening. I just stopped talking. That was the moment the whole thing cracked open for me. Saying less isn't the finish line. It's the doorway. If you say less and don't use the space for anything, you haven't gained authority, you've just gone quiet. The point of the silence was never the silence itself. It was what the silence makes room for. And what it's supposed to make room for is hearing, actually taking in what the other person says, not just waiting politely for the sound of their voice to stop so you can have the floor back. I started paying attention to how differently those two things felt from the inside. Quiet but waiting has a kind of low hum of impatience to it, a small clock running, counting down to your turn. Actually hearing someone feels almost the opposite. Time slows down a little, because you're not managing your own comeback, you're following theirs. You ask a real follow-up question, not a transitional one. You remember what they said 3 sentences ago, not just the last 5 words. You notice the thing they almost said and didn't. Most people, most of the time, are rehearsing their reply while the other person is still talking. That's not a character flaw, it's just how a lot of us are trained to hold a conversation, because we've been taught that if we're not ready with something to say the second there's a gap, we'll look unprepared, or worse, we'll seem to have nothing to offer. But that training produces exactly the failure mode I'd fallen into. A room full of people taking turns broadcasting at each other, none of them actually receiving. Part 6, building the other half. Once I saw it, I built a second rule to go with the first one. The first rule was, say less than you're tempted to. The second rule was harder. When someone else is talking, don't use the time to build your response. Use the time to actually track theirs. This sounds simple and is not simple. The habit of preparing your next line while someone talks is deep and automatic, and unlearning it took longer than unlearning the over-talking had. I started with something almost mechanical. After someone finished a thought, before I said anything, I'd silently repeat back to myself, not out loud, the actual content of what they just said. Not my reaction to it. The thing itself. It forced a kind of attention I hadn't been paying. Half the time, I realized I couldn't do it. I'd been in the room, nodding, and I genuinely could not have told you the sentence before last. The change this made was different from the change that came from talking less. Talking less made people trust my answers more. Actually listening made people tell me more, earlier, and more honestly. There's a specific look someone gets when they realize, mid-sentence, that you're actually tracking what they're saying instead of waiting for your cue. They slow down. They add the detail they were going to skip. They say the real version instead of the polished one, because the room has stopped feeling like a performance and started feeling like an exchange. I think of the two halves now as a single motion, not two separate disciplines. Saying less clears the space. Hearing more is what you do with the space once it's clear. One without the other is incomplete in opposite directions, All silence and no attention is just withdrawal, and all attention with no restraint means you never actually contribute, you just absorb. The version that works is active on both ends, economical when you speak, fully present when you don't. Part 7. Where this goes wrong. I want to be honest about the failure modes here, because I ran into both of them and I don't want to pretend I didn't. Saying less than necessary can tip into saying less than true. There's a version of restraint that becomes withholding, where you go quiet not because you trust the room, but because you're using silence as leverage, letting people fill in gaps with their own anxiety instead of giving them what they actually need. That's not restraint. That's a different kind of manipulation, and it usually gets noticed eventually, because people can tell the difference between someone who trusts them with less information and someone who's rationing information to feel powerful. And listening has its own failure mode, which is quieter and easier to miss: performative attentiveness. Nodding, eye contact, the whole posture of listening, with nothing underneath it, no actual tracking, no real change in what you understood. It's possible to look like you're hearing someone while you're really just waiting, and a lot of us get good enough at the performance that we fool even ourselves. The version that works is the one where the silence is in service of something outside yourself. If someone needs the full context to make a good decision, give it to them. Brevity is not the same as omission. And if someone is telling you something, actually let it change what you know, rather than just letting it pass through you while you wait for your turn. The discipline, on both ends, isn't about cutting things down for its own sake. It's about cutting the parts that exist only to manage how you're perceived, and replacing them with the parts that exist to actually understand or be understood. Part 8. The room, revisited again. These days, when I'm in a meeting, I try to run both halves at once. Say what needs to be said, in as few words as it actually takes. Then, in the space that opens up, actually listen to whatever comes back, not politely, not performatively, but with real attention, tracking it the way I'd want someone to track something that mattered to me. It's a strange kind of power, if you want to call it that. It doesn't look like much from the outside. There's no big gesture, no dramatic moment where the room turns to look at you. It's just someone who says less than you expect and then, when you talk, actually seems to be there for it. But I've watched what it does over time. People bring you the real version of things faster. They trust you with the parts they'd normally edit out. And somewhere in there, without you ever raising your voice or taking up more space than you need, you end up being the person the room actually listens to, because you were the one who was listening first. That's the whole thing, really. Not silence as a trick, and not attentiveness as a performance. Both of them together, as a form of respect, for the listener's time when you're speaking, and for the speaker's meaning when you're not. The truest, sharpest version of a conversation is almost never the loudest one. It's the one where less gets said than could have been, and more gets heard than usually is. If this was useful, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me which room you've been the loudest person in. Like the video if it hit home. See you in the next one.